Hey, I want to welcome our viewers to a very special podcast. We're on the golf side of the podcast. So we have a golfer and a person that was referred, Rand Eberhardt, said, you got to talk to this guy. And so I'm going to have him introduce himself, who he is, the business, what he's doing, and who he serves, and then we'll get started. Go ahead, Bruce, please.
Thanks so much for having me. Yeah, it's Bruce Pulver. I'm a husband to one, a father to two daughters, and been living in Atlanta since the mid 80s. And my initial career was in the healthcare technology business for many, many years. We'll kind of talk about how I got into that, if that's appropriate.
Yes.
But the other side of me, sort of the hybrid version of Pulver, is during that work career, I had a moment in life where everything changed. I had 25 plus years with a company and various levels of sales and implementations and customer relationship work and that sort of thing, multiple products on a company. And the company reorganized and let 500 people go on the same day. And yes, I was one of those. And shortly after that, probably because of my mother's gratitude and my dad's love of words, we'll talk about that in a while, I just woke up one morning and a single word was pounding in my head. And that word was, Bruce, you need to be strong. Obvious, right? You got to go find a new job. You got providing for your family. I mentioned my wife and two kids, but I looked at that word and I wrote it vertically, and immediately it kind of unfolded and blossomed into a statement. And the statement was just using those letters, Pete, and it was stand tall, remain optimistic, now go for it. It was a way that kind of kicked me into gear for that day. It didn't fix all the other stuff of denial and anger and doubt and all the emotions we go through, but it gave me something to kind of latch onto, to say, okay, Bruce, find something to be strong with. So, I mean, we can go, that was many years ago, but that ultimately became a book called Above the Chatter, Our Words Matter. And it is a collection of about 400 consecutive mornings, every morning writing a new word when I woke up to encourage myself. I began sharing it. It became evident divinely that I was downloaded these messages, that it needed to be more than just a 3-ring binder that I handed to my kids at Christmas. So the story has changed. Everything has changed in my life by focusing on the power of our words in whatever situation we're in, a challenge, an opportunity, struggle, a goal we're chasing, etc. So that's really what I'm doing. I'm out speaking about that, doing workshops, keynotes, and trying to just spread the power of our intention as it relates to the words we use.
That's awesome. I usually Google people's names before the podcast. So I Google and up comes your TED Talk. And I'm going, what? And I then connected when Rand told me, he has a TED Talk, and it didn't dawn on me to that second. So I listened to it. So tell our viewers, like, you have a lot of things in there, we'll put a link to the TED Talk in the show notes, but talk about BAM and then how that relates to really challenges that people are being faced with.
Yeah, thank you for asking, and thanks for the comments on the TED. That was quite an experience. Well, to me, a BAM moment in life is, and I'll apologize ahead of time for just using what comes to mind. Everything might be just cruising along, right? Whether it's your work is going great, your relationships are fine, your health is seemingly perfect, and all of a sudden something shifts. So go back to that. The job changes, the market gets bad, a diagnosis, an unforeseen situation medically, a relationship blows up that you didn't see coming, or maybe you saw coming, but it was not really in focus. But it changes everything in the blink of an eye. And I think we all have something like that in our life we can relate to in various degrees of where it hits us, right? And that's where I realized that there's a lot of things that were given to me in my upbringing. When I mean given, I mean my mother's gratitude for life, my father's, sort of positivity and love of words, all kind of forged together. And I had to go and dig into that And fortunately, there was a faith aspect to that kind of tied it all together for me. Mm-hmm. Then we move forward. Then it's like, okay, where do we go?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, woe is me, how about wow is me? Or with my faith background, it's wow is he, where we can lean into where, we really are becoming the person that God intends us to be.
Well, that's, it just struck me. There was another thing. I was like, okay, this is one I'm going to watch over and over again because there's a lot of gold nuggets in it. And then maybe people, what I think that saying is when the student is ready, the teacher will appear. And so when you hear something that kind of hits you right in the heart, you kind of like, wow. So let's talk about words. I mean, I really love the idea of what words mean to us and how we approach things with words.
Okay, so you're going to get a little bit into the sort of the dynamics of what goes between these ears. Mm-hmm. If you look at words and put the S at the beginning, it becomes sword. Wow. So I truly believe that words are a sword. They can protect and uplift, and serve us and others, or they can slay us. They can absolutely, devour us. And so here's an example that I use often. We might feel like we are bound, right? And the first thing that might come to our mind is we're restricted. We can't move. We have limits, right? I'm bound. Like I'm in this sand trap, and getting this ball out. I got nothing, right? Well, true, maybe. But another way to look at that word is I'm bound and determined to do whatever it takes. Same word, Pete. So I just think words are so important because they are the script, and you, Pete, are the only person that will ever hear every word you say out loud and every word you say to yourself. And I'm the same way. So that script is so important in setting our thoughts, our intentions, our beliefs in ourselves and in others, ultimately our actions. Oh man, I'm gonna hit it in the water, right? Or I can't get this promotion. Either way, the likelihood of those things happening, ball's going in the water, not going to get the opportunity. Not that you will if you say there's no water over there or I'm the only candidate and I've got this, but you set yourself on the path of your intention by the words that we use.
Yeah. And when I listen to the TED Talk, I've heard plenty of times the self-talk phrase used over and over again, but it didn't hit me as much as the when you just describe words, because it kind of like, yes, it is words. And so I think it helps define the importance of the words we use, not just that standard phrase of self-talk, which you hear it all over and over again. Yeah. Words do matter. I think that's really good. So I like, for our golf listeners, I'll switch over because they always say, well, what are you talking? You're not talking about golf, Pete. Well, we're talking about life. Okay. So talk about adaptive golf. What is your involvement and what brought you to adaptive golf and why?
Yeah, thanks. Great question. And what an amazing inspiration that community is to me. So I participate in a men's fellowship group that's based out of Nashville, Tennessee, called In His Grip Golf Ministries by Scott Lehman has put that together. And one of the guys who show up on these Zoom calls, which we had when COVID hit, it was a Wednesday night Zoom, is a gentleman from Chicago named Jonathan Snyder. And Jonathan was born with a right arm, right hand, and a left arm that stopped just below his elbow. Mm-hmm. And he's a golfer, and we kind of started talking about what he does and bringing those with unique situations around physical and mental as well, right? Into the game of golf. And the game is adapted so that it can be played by anyone. Yes. And what drew me to it was, first of all, Jonathan's just a great man and a brother in faith and has been such an inspiration to me. But a gentleman in Atlanta named Dave Windsor runs the Georgia State Golf Association's adaptive golf program. Mm-hmm. And I met him and he said, "Hey, Bruce, why don't you see if you can get engaged in some way?" And I truly believe we all have gifts, which I say is God installed features to share, GIFTS, mm-hmm. to get in where we fit in. And for me, there's a spinal and traumatic hospital downtown Atlanta called the Shepherd Center. And Dave said, "Why don't you come down to Shepherd? We work with patients that have, stroke, traumatic brain injury, spinal cord problems." And I just stepped into this and I saw folks coming into the gym with their therapist, either in chairs or walking or somehow assisted. And Dave showed us how to put a golf club in that person's hand. They may have played the game before. They may have watched it. They may know somebody you have. They may never have played. And with some of the adaptive equipment that's available, these folks are, hitting a golf ball into a net in the gym. And it's not so much that. It's when they're done and they leave, yes, and they want to come back and they want to see, and the excitement of hearing that click, and it may even be a wiffle ball or a tennis ball they're hitting into a Velcro target. Mm-hmm. Just for me, just fills me up when I maybe had a bad morning and I'm walking into here. So that led to getting certified as a golf instructor for adaptive golf. And then this past weekend, the Georgia State Golf Association had its adaptive open at Bobby Jones course here in Atlanta. And I had the honor of being asked to caddy for my friend Jonathan Snyder. So we went out and knocked it around for 3 days together.
Yeah, that is, it's kind of like when you said about the Shepherd Center, there's something about places that are very special. And in the Bobby Jones environment, there was a gentleman, Dr. Richie Zane, and he was an OBGYN. And so he was busy his whole career, and then stroke hits. Now he's he's retired. He's trying to figure, what am I going to do with my time? And I don't know if I said something to him or he just heard it through David or something, but he shows up at that Bobby Jones and he literally is leaning on a golf cart and they're putting a golf ball in there and he's one-handed hitting it. Now, fast forward a year, he just texted me the other day. He came back from Hilton Head and he was by himself, not by himself, but he was in his foursome playing golf with his family. And so you now take a person that really didn't embrace golf, but he's embraced it under the adaptive mindset. And Orlando Rodriguez is teaching him down there at Bobby Jones and doing phenomenal. The guy just now has that golf bug. And, for every golfer, we know that golf bug. It hits it one time and it never leaves. It's just, and to see an adaptive person that had that bam moment, what do you do? Well, you have to figure out what the next phase is going to be like. So, yeah, it's kind of special. I really love what David's doing with adaptive golf. So you're like involved in teaching, or what's your role within the adaptive golf?
Yeah, so at this point, I'm volunteering, and Orlando is the guy that Orlando Rodriguez leads the clinic at Shepherd. So here's what I'm really trying to do. Yes, I have some new skills, right, about how to actually approach the game from an adaptive physical perspective. But, one of the things that this book that we wrote was a divine gift to me that helped me out of a trench that I could have gotten stuck in. And as I was working through this process, I clearly felt like the message was, yeah, Bruce, don't worry about going on some, 40 million person watched talk show and talk about this book. Find places where it can serve others. So I go with a backpack, and I don't want this to ever sound about me, but I go with a backpack that has books within. And I'm helping the families or the guys and the gals, whatever, get set up and hit some balls. Maybe it's putts. And often I'll notice, a parent or a loved one or a sister or a brother there, right, as the caretaker. And it's just an opportunity for me to kind of step in and say, wow, it's amazing to be here. I cannot, it's awesome to see the effort, and the recovery and the road. And then I'll just hand them a book, and it kind of solidifies the mutual bam moment in some kind of spiritual way, maybe. And just that's the role I'm playing. It's yes, I physically want to understand how to encourage and do things properly, but I'm always looking, and I guess it's because of the gift that was given for me, to find a way to kind of, I don't know, maybe even write the person's name vertically, and say what I saw in Jamie's morning, joy, affirmation, whatever, manifesting and, healing. Just boom, and I'll just write it on a little card and maybe give it to the parents or something. It's just because I think there's so much, and this, but probably better than I do, there's so much mental aspect to growth, whether it's recovery growth or it's, expanding your mind and becoming better at something. And I think we talked about our words are that sword.
Yeah, I love that sword. I'm going to use that. I'll give you credit the first couple times, and then I'll act like I came up with it.
So,
No, it really does. Words are so powerful. I have a little rock, and it's encouragement, and I just try to, encourage, and that's my word, is just to, whatever. But tell us back on golf, so, did you grow up playing golf, or did you were a late bloomer to golf?
I would say late bloomer. So kind of a little bit about the family. My dad loved basketball. He loved sports, but he was also a jazz musician. He played the drums. So I grew up playing baseball and tennis, probably about maybe 13 or 14. That age where everybody starts growing, and when you don't, it's like, wow, that fastball's a lot faster now, right? But also the music side. So I grew up playing the drums, and so rhythm was always part of our life, whether it was, not stepping in the cracks of the sidewalk, or is it 3 steps or 4, the windshield wipers, does it ever align with your music, that kind of stuff. And the first person who put a golf club in my hand was in the mid 80s when I moved to Atlanta in 83. I think it was probably 86 or so. And the gentleman is still a dear friend of mine, and his name is James Pascal. And James was the pro at Hidden Hills Country Club in Stone Mountain. Then he went on to be the head pro at Country Club of the South. And I think the last Atlanta a golf director position was at Brookstone. And that was probably all until maybe the mid 90s. And then he went to Dothan. And anyway, he's in Nashville now. But he's the first person that put a golf club in my hand. I was probably 26 years old. But the cool thing about James, and, I love just watching how instructors instruct, is he said to me the first time he saw me hit balls, he goes, "Do you play any other sports?" Okay, so boom, we're going to connect to something that I already kind of have instead of this whole new concept. And I said baseball. He says, "What position do you?" I said, I did some pitching, played some infield. He goes, "Okay, so everything's coming off your back foot to go forward, right?" I said, "Yeah, you can't throw anybody out at first base if you're falling back away from first base, unless you're, some superstar, rock star infielder." And from a tennis perspective, it's the same thing, right? You want to be driving forward to the net when you're driving the ball. So that's how he introduced me to the game there. And again, right, one hit ball that doesn't feel like you hit it, that went so far you can't see it. You go, okay, I'm back. I'm hooked. I want that shot every time. So that was in the mid 80s.
Wow. A lot of my friends, I played high school and golf. I played golf in high school, and everybody else played football, basketball, all the other big sports.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a little bit later that my friends started migrating to golf, and you get hooked. So it's like that first birdie or that first flush shot. You're like, oh my, I have to have more of this.
That's right.
So, where has golf taken you? You're obviously a little older than 26. Yeah. So where has golf taken you, in your path and your journey in your career? Yeah. How has that affected what you do?
Yeah. So I guess probably the first thing, I haven't really thought about this in a while, was about 2 years into my first company out of college, my company that I was working for was acquired. And so there were 2 or 3 different companies now assembled. and this was in Atlanta. And I got word that there's this tournament that's just pretty much company members that goes down to Callaway Gardens every year. Like,
Right.
well, I'd like to do that, meet some more people, et cetera. And it was called the Norman Numbnuts Invitational Golf Tournament. And it was played at Callaway Gardens.
Yeah.
And, it started out maybe 16 guys would go. And then I ended up taking that planning assistant and then head planner of the thing. And we ended up having 60 guys and gals come down to Callaway for a long weekend. And that just helped build some relationships. And I mean, there were some guys that would play once a year, and there are guys who were, zeros or plus ones. And we would just organize the teams so that it didn't really matter who won, because it was like $100 to win. But you did get the plaid jacket with the logo.
Ooh.
And we had private label cigars we made. We had golf towels and hats and the foam check. But it wasn't, it was kind of and there was another thing about this tournament that was so much fun. It was that I had a listening package that folks could buy. It's kind of like Mulligan's, except it was the coordinator of the tournament would offer these packages that said, I would listen to you for any complaints you had about the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
Pairings, the traps, the fairway, anything. I would come bring it to me. And that was like, $10 a person. But it was $100 a person if they wanted me to listen with sincerity. Like I really cared, right? And then I'd also say, remember, it is an invitational. So, but that was just a great way. And then, from business, right? And there were times when, you could take a client out and you'd spend 4 hours with someone and really get to know them. So it's taken me there. And it's allowed me to play at some, pretty nice courses in, kind of a customer event type of thing. So Eastlake I've been there a couple of times, I've been able to take some customers, and there's such a great part about the game of its reciprocal nature, its camaraderie, etc. So yeah, it's allowed me to play in, a lot of association tournaments, and I'm not a great player, but I'll go third or fourth in the scramble. If we don't have one in play, I'll go, okay, maybe we hit an iron. It's just a way to build such great relationships. That.
Yeah. And, that is kind of a unique thing that golf brings, is that unlike tennis and others, I mean, tennis you do afterwards, you have a little get together if it's Alta or something like that. But you're in the cart with somebody for 3, 4.5, 5 hours. And so the time you can spend with somebody is kind of unique in sports. Mm-hmm. So what is like your favorite course that you played that our listeners would go, yeah, I want to play that one? What course would you say?
It would probably be Peachtree.
Okay.
Club. That was that's one of those invitations. If you're a member there, it's so beautiful, and it's Mr. Jones's gift to Atlanta, right? And it's one of those where, the call came Thursday at 9:00, and it was, hey, we got an 11:30, and we got an opening today. Can you come? It's like, yes. It was one of those, such an honor to be on that property.
Yeah.
That's one that I love. We would travel when our kids were younger. We would go to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. And there are a couple of really nice courses out there that I enjoyed, because we would go. We were able at that time to go for a couple of weeks. And what I always loved about it was day 3 through day 9, because your blood, everything is calm, right? You're not worried about, hey, we just got here, or hey, I'm leaving tomorrow. And we just go out and kind of play that course. And then the Nags Head Golf Links, not a long course, but incredibly windy, and just kind of have to play your shots, you're that way. Had the opportunity for a friend's 40th birthday, a couple's event several years ago, to go down and stay at the Breakers in Palm Beach.
Ooh,
and we played at Jupiter. We were able to, it was a group that was able to get us on. Yeah. And I got to play with Bing Crosby's grandson.
Wow.
Nathaniel Crosby was in that party of that birthday thing. And just being, my music background, right? And the love of golf. And of course, he was I think he was a U.S. amateur champion in the mid or late 80s.
Yep.
And of course, being his grandfather. So that was a fun, you talk about the interaction. It's not as much the golf course sometimes as it is who you get the time to spend with.
Yeah, that's, the relationships that you have through golf are very unique because, like you say, you're in that tournament and then here's Bing Crosby's grandson. So you're having a conversation with somebody that you wouldn't normally have if it wasn't through golf.
Yeah.
So have you ever like bumped into, because you mentioned Jupiter, Florida, that tends to be the PGA place where all the pros hang out. Have you ever played with anybody that our viewers would recognize a name? Shook hands with them, like teed it up with them?
No, I really can't say that you got me on the spot there. I'm thinking, just oftentimes it's being able to play with even if it's a PGA professional. So when I get a chance to play with James Pascal again, right after all the years we've been together, that's such a joy. There've been probably some from a corporate perspective. A CEO here and there, you're kind of going, okay, you're on their team and, they may not play that much. They're working on getting the revenues up and the earnings per share and the stock price. And so you're in the foursome, probably the first one off the tee because, they want to go. They don't want to be held up. And, you're fourth in that group and you got nothing, right? There's nothing to play. So you just kind of say, okay, just bring the practice range shot, put it in the fairway, and the pressure along with that is actually that's kind of fun. Actually, it's kind of fun to be in that moment of practicing for the moment where the pressure's on, and what can I do here? Can I alleviate? So
the captain's choice is such a unique way. You drain a putt, and you're like a 35 handicapper, but you drain a putt. Everybody's high-fiving you, and you feel like you've just won the U.S. Open because you get that endorphin kick.
Yeah,
I did have on the show Bruce Cerrone, who works with Rand down there at the Church of the Apostles. So he texted me like a couple of days later. He says, "You asked me that question of who I knew, and I completely blanked out." So he goes, "I went to school with Tiger Woods' caddy, Joe LaCava." I went, "Whoa, holy mackerel, you forgot about that." But, it just all of a sudden you're not thinking back high school. You're not thinking anything. But he said, I went to college. I went to college with them and all that. So, everybody kind of all of a sudden you fast forward through life and you go, hey, that person I did have a chance to tee it up.
Yeah, so that's a great question. And I will say that I was playing baseball and music at this time in my life, but I went to a high school in a small town on the west coast of Florida. Okay. St. Pete, Tampa. If you know those towns, you probably know Clearwater. And then one town north of that is this Scottish town called Dunedin, Florida. It actually was the home of the PGA of America back in the 50s, I believe, before it moved up to the Jacksonville beyond. But in my high school class was an LPGA player named Amy Benz. She played, so she was a couple years younger than me. So she played probably in the mid 80s. And another guy in my class was John Houston. And, John holds some records of shooting some rounds in the 50s and has had some challenges with his back. But I think he has had the surgery and he's playing again. But John was definitely probably the player in our town as we were growing up.
Yeah, that's always cool that you think that. Now, I have to ask a personal question because maybe this is you have two daughters. Yes. And so were you able to get them into golf or have any experience with them playing golf? Because I failed.
Yeah, so not really, but there's still time, right? The oldest is in her mid-20s and the youngest is in her early 20s. I will say, though, shout out to my daughters. My oldest was a pretty competitive volleyball player through high school, and loved that sport. And played soccer in high school as well. And my youngest, she just purely focused on soccer and just finished her career playing soccer at the University of Georgia and helping manage the team her last year. So athletically, they run circles around their dad. But yeah, they both have said that's something that they'd like to do. What I think though, is that this guy isn't the one that teaches them.
Yeah.
I want to get them in front of an Orlando or get them
Yes.
in front of James and have them, absorb a real instructor's approach so they can build it for themselves. But yeah, we've gone out a few times and ridden with me. You know how it is, right? Putt a few and hit a couple. Yeah.
That's good advice. Golfing dad is probably not the best teacher for the daughters. They like, Dad, you know other things, but golf, it may not be on their radar. What do you think, when it comes to your personal, golf? Are you a good putter? Where's the strength in your game, do you feel?
I think that's a great question. For me, I think my strength, because I'm not a large guy, is the fact that I had the music background and the rhythm aspect. If I can stay in a rhythm that I don't get ahead of myself, I stay balanced. Probably, getting off the tee and, 100-yard to 125-yard shot is where I've kind of leaned on my game. Mm-hmm. Working with Orlando, who we kind of talked about earlier, through some adaptive golf, he's given me some help. He's really helping me on, swinging the club as it relates to the 100-yard and in shot, and just getting some confidence there versus, trying to stab at, getting it around the green. So, and putting, putting's a mystery to me. I think I putt better with my eyes closed sometimes than I do when I'm reading the putt. Mm-hmm. I mean, because sometimes there's so much in there that I don't see, and that's probably where I need some real guidance. So if there's any tips anybody wants to show me about looking at a green and reading it, boy, I'm wide open.
Yeah, I kind of gravitated years ago to Dave Stockton and how he reads putts, and there's a lot of course, videos out there, and I'll go to our club, and everybody's banging it over the fence. They're hitting the driver like 400 yards, and the putting green is like nobody's on it. I mean, it's there's a few, but people tend to, now power is a big part of the game. And I think, the putting aspect, maybe some people don't, it's not as sexy to get on that putting green and try to stroke a putt. Better to bang it out there 300 yards. What is your go-to club? Like, what have you seen, like the club that when you have to, you pull that out of your bag?
It's my 54-degree wedge.
Okay.
And we're really comfortable at a certain yardage with it. And sometimes, so when I was working with James Pascal, he's like, how much are you playing? I said, I'm not playing that much. He goes, okay, let's incorporate this type of practice. Number one, get loose. Then one ball between two flags, driver, go. That's it. Not six of them, one. Now, if it's in between those two flags, great. Pick a yardage, 150, 110, whatever. Hit that shot to that target. Okay, now, next ball, par 3, 180. Hit your 180 club, pick the flag. If it's on the flag, great. If you snapped it or you ducked it, now you chip a ball into that target a little bit short. So he has helped me work on, and it's not the same as playing. I get that. But instead of just, like you said, pounding the balls, and then, maybe the last 10, 15, 20, 30 balls, just work on that one wedge. And so I'll look at a hole. If I want a 110-yard shot in, I'll just do the math. Does it require a driver? Does it require a 3-wood? Can I get off there with an iron? If it puts me into the place for that second shot in, because I don't have the full arsenal, right, of yard numbers. I don't have the 67-yard wedge dialed into my feel yet. That's how it's helped me.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, we always say, I know the recent Ryder Cup, they felt like the wedge game of the U.S. was better than the Europeans. And so they tried to take that wedge part of the game out of the course by setting it up. So, yeah, the wedge, there's some incredible wedge players on the tour and how accurate they are with their yardage. I have to ask this because I haven't asked it in a while, but back in June, Matt Vanderpool, who's like the Georgia Golf Association, I think he's the executive director, he invited a guy by the name of Ralph Stokes on here. And Ralph he's the head of diversity in golf, So I asked him, like, the day before was the Live PGA merge. So it was fresh. It was like that next day. So what do you think about the Live and the PGA, all that's going on there? What's your thoughts on it?
Yes. So I'll step back for a second. First
Mhm.
of all, it's the game. I mean, this sounds like Bruce is kind of hokey here, but it's a game you can't win. It's a game that continually challenges us. It's the only
Yep.
sport on the planet that you have to call a penalty on yourself.
Yep.
Globally, yeah, I love the growth of the game. I mean, I'll also oftentimes, I live in town in the Buckhead area. I'll say I'm going to Chastain at 7 o'clock on a Saturday morning without a tee time. It
Hmm.
doesn't matter. Someone's gonna miss that fourth, right? Someone's gonna have been out Friday night. Johnny didn't make it out of bed today, and I raise my
Yep.
hand and I say, I'll be the guy.
Yeah.
And just playing with different players all over the world that might be in town for staying at a hotel, and this is the closest place they can play. So to me, it's about the game. There's aspects of human rights and all that kind of stuff that we can get into, but I think if the growth of the game brings more people to the game, not for a money making perspective, so that folks can find their way to the way you and I love the game, right? It's about friendships. It's about meeting someone new. It's about raking someone else's trap when they've got they're out, but you're close enough to it's that thing that allows us to, I think, live the life that God intended us to be.
Yeah.
So there's a lot around that we can kind of go off in tangents, but man, to me, it's about the game. It's about Mr.
Yeah.
Jones. It's about Mr. Crenshaw, Mr. Hogan, Mr. Nicholas, Mr. Palmer, and how many people learn so many things about how to live through how they presented themselves on the golf course.
Yeah, that's really good. I mean, I got exposed to it early on because I didn't have TV, so I was watching it on my app,
Yeah.
and so all my friends go, it's too busy, too much going on. It's not traditional golf. They're, shotgun start, and I don't understand the team aspect of it and all that.
Yeah.
But I do think it gets down to, the game has evolved and it's different. Well, our attention spans are very short, very much shorter than they were when you and I grew up. So kids today, it's like, they instant videos, instant this, instant that.
Yeah.
So that Live kind of feeds on that. I love the team aspect of it.
Yeah.
I remember when Danny Lee made a putt, everybody in that playoff or that Live event was surrounding that player that was in the playoff. And when he made it, it was like, high five. And that team aspect, because you normally don't get that in golf, provides that, camaraderie, almost like a captain's choice type thing where you're rooting for your team member. So it's kind of cool. But most of my friends I've noticed never really gave it a chance because they're traditional. So we tee off on the first hole, we do this, we do that. And I think there's a lot to be said about tradition. So what would you say, like, and we'll go back to your book. So how are you, I know you take some to the Shepherd Center. Are you speaking in different places and letting people know about what you're sharing in your book?
Yeah, that's really my mission now, right? I've
Okay.
sort of stepped away from the corporate world, and I don't know. I want this to come across the right way. There's a great book written called Halftime by I think it's Bill Buford, and the subtitle of it is Going from Success to Significance. And I think I'm kind of at that point in life of where can I have the most impact? Not that I've got this massive answer or you flip a switch or whatever, but where can I make some sort of impact? And what I'm finding is the power of our words, our conversations, our relationships, all are driven by that. And so whether it's in the boardroom or with the executive leadership team of a company saying, hey, we really got to dial in on something, whether it's culture or it's purpose or whatever, we can take that word, unpack it a bunch of different ways and say, okay, what does that mean? And when we leave, we have something that we can activate in our teams, right? The same is true going into a school and having the opportunity to pour into our youth about, how important, whether it's self-confidence, self-belief, blowing down limits. There's this thing called FOMO, right? Fear of missing out. I call it GMO, glad I'm missing out. Let's be okay with being, who we are. So it's really everything. What I really try to do is, if a corporation or organization is looking to pour into their people, whether it's a leadership team or, the staff or something like that, I like to go to that organization, wherever it is, across the country, the globe, it doesn't matter. Then we stay a day. And we stay a day because that's about, where do you pour into your community? The Boys and Girls Club, adaptive golf. It might be a homeless shelter. It might be a food bank. We go down there and we carve out an hour or two and we talk to folks who wouldn't ordinarily really be thinking about this kind of stuff. We just try to plant a seed. So that's really my mission. Corporate speaking, associations, keynotes, national conferences, and then, okay, where can we collectively do more?
It's awesome. There's a gentleman I'll connect you up with. He started Youth Centric because and his organization helps those late high school and those early college really deal with a different world, which, you mentioned about who care, not like if you miss out on something. Today, they're streaming the party, and you never used to know there was a party going on. But now they're streaming it, and people go, I didn't get invited to that party. And so they feel left out, and the pressures are different than when we grow up of just, the world is like right in front of us. We see everything, videos, Instagram, all that kind of stuff. But Bruce really talked about, and I'll connect you up with him, just impacting, and he lets the college ones talk to the high school ones. He kind of like sets himself back and allows them to engage with each other and share what's going on. So, and he speaks too. So that'd be really good as you are impacting people through your mission and calling. And we're gonna put links in the show notes to your TED Talk, to your book, and some other things. But tell our viewers how they would get a hold of you.
Yeah. So website is the title of the book. So that's Above the Chatter, ourwordsmatter.com.
Mm-hmm.
Every day, every weekday on LinkedIn which is Bruce Pulver, on my social, which is Instagram is Above the Chatter, Bruce Pulver, and Facebook the same. I write a new word. So I'm still writing. Today I wrote the word inspirational, and that was a reflection of being at the adaptive golf for the weekend. And I post those out there. So it's a really good way to just kind of follow me there. And it's not about follows and likes. To me, it's about the ripple. There's a word that someone sees and they say, man, I needed that. Like, today will be awesome. What does that mean? A wonderful experience shall overwhelm my expectations. Share it out with somebody, because you never know. And I will never meet many folks if that ripple continues out, and that's supposed to be okay. So there, I do a Saturday morning walk and talk on Facebook. I do like 10 minutes, and folks can go out to my Bruce Pulver Facebook page, and I go live from there. And, shoot, 404-273-8334. Just reach out to me directly. Make a personal touch, and I'd love to chat with you about how I might be able to serve you.
It's awesome. We appreciate I know our viewers love when, we have a golf, but we talk a little bit more than golf, because we could talk all day long about golf. It's an easy subject. It's kind of like, I was passing a guy in my place I live, and he waved me in, and he's in the gym pumping iron. He's 82. 45 minutes later, we're talking golf, and he's pumping the iron, and he's telling stories about golf. It's kind of like that common language. You can talk golf stories and all that. Well, I will ask one thing before we go. We're winding down. Hole in one. Have you ever had one?
I have not. I do have a picture of a ball mark that was about a ball mark away, but
really,
not in one yet. So that's okay. Keeps me coming back. Right?
the odds are 1 in 16 million, I was told. And then a friend of mine had a double eagle, and it's like the odds there are off the planet. It's crazy. And he had one. And so he was like on cloud nine. Okay. So we always let our guests like leave our viewers with like an insight or something that they can remember you by. What would you like to share with our viewers?
Well, I kind of landed on the word gifts before, like God installed features to share. We all have them. But I think as we go through this self-talk kind of thing, and you're right, it's more than that. It's the power of the words we choose to speak to ourselves. One of my favorites is actually not a word. It's just a collection of letters. So I'd ask folks to maybe write this down on a 3x5 card, put it in the notes of their phone, and it's the letter U, R, E, and then the three letters N-U-F. You are enough, because we all have that inside us. It's just a matter of pulling it out, sharing it, because that's where I really think the true meaning of life comes from. So I would say, just remember, you are enough. Yeah. Some assembly required, right? You got to work at it. But just by our nature, the way we're created, we have all that it takes inside of us.
Awesome, man, Bruce, man, you delivered. You in golf language, you hit it out off. You hit it over the net on the driving range. I would normally say you hit a grand slam, but that wouldn't be a golf term. So right. You crushed it. You crushed it. Thank you so much, Bruce.
Well, thanks for having me, and what a great outlet. And thank you for doing this. You're providing so much opportunity for folks who love the game, but it's all the other aspects that come into play. So, Pete, yes. I can't thank you enough for having me on.
You are most welcome, and we'll love to hear from you again. But thank you, Bruce. We appreciate you much.